welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 441, and today's date is August 14th, 2014, and the title of this episode is False Flag Warning, ISIS Dispatching Terrorists to the United States. Now, of course, we understand terrorists aren't really coming to the United States. This is going to be an inside job to make it look like, yes, there were terrorists here, and they pretty much destroyed our economy, and we have to go off to war. And you can see this is really building up now. We have to understand what is going on inside the Middle East right now. We understand that the economy is falling apart. That is a no-brainer right now, and it looks like the economy is escalating and deteriorating very, very quickly as we move into the fall. But what's happening in the Middle East is they needed a terror group in this region because the civil war with Syria was not working out. They've been doing this for three and a half years, and they were getting absolutely nowhere. So they had to switch up tactics right now. The goal is still the same. They want to get into Syria and then eventually get into Iran. So that has not changed one bit. What they're doing now is switching it up. Al-Qaeda, they're no use to them anymore. The word Al-Qaeda, no use to them. So what's going to happen is they're going to start switching it up, and pretty soon you'll be hearing the Islamic State in each one of these countries. Now you have to remember, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, the tribes there are rising up, and they realize they cannot keep these tribes back with drone attacks. It's not working. Right now they're sending in military assets to Yemen, sending it to Lebanon, and right now the Libyan government, they're pretty much done there. They're calling out for international help. They're going to the UN saying that we need protection for our civilians. They need the UN to say, yes, we can send forces in there, but this hasn't happened yet. They're waiting for a specific time, and you have to remember, during this time period, they kept saying that Al-Qaeda, all these insurgents, they were trying to take over the government, and they're creating terrorism all in the country. And these were the tribes of the country. Pretty soon you're not going to hear Al-Qaeda anymore. You're just going to hear the Islamic State. Oh, they're making moves into Lebanon, which they've tried already, and they're going into other countries. Now, this is the controlled group by the United States, Israel, and the UK, where they're going to try to push them into these countries and try to meld them into what has been happening there. So this way they can call everyone the Islamic State, and this way they can go after all these people. And this is what they do. And we can see the first part of the plan is to get Maliki out of there. He was not following orders anymore, and it does look like Maliki is stepping down, and they need a government in there that's going to do exactly what the United States government central bankers want them to do. Now, we also see that the Islamic State is maneuvering into Syria right now, and there are reports out there that they're making headway in Syria, and sooner or later they're going to start making claims that the Islamic State is working with Syria, and actually they have begun doing this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this report. So we can see right now their agenda right now is to change the government, and it looks like they did it. Now their second phase is to spread them out into the other countries and include Syria in this. And we can see this is all going as planned so far. And also we have to remember the Islamic State said, if the United States attacks us, we will be attacking the United States. So they have the false flag coming. They have their agenda, which they're pushing through the Middle East. And we can see this is going to continually go on as we progress here. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand Europe, they are pretty much in a depression right now. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, each one of these countries, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Cyprus, Greece, they're pretty much in a depression. I mean, unemployment is skyrocketing, and right now they're looking at the situation and they're saying, you know something? They're going to have to recalculate their forecasts because they're predicting that going forward, it's not going to get any better. It's actually going to get worse. And you know what? It really is. Here in the United States, what's happening is that all those people that were laid off and their severance packages were, coming to an end, and they thought they were going to have these jobs. Well, they're not getting the jobs, and they're starting to say, you know what, we better go on unemployment right now as we continually put out our resume. And you have to remember, from the beginning of this year, going throughout this year, there were so many layoffs, and they're continuing throughout this year. And we're going to see as more and more people come off these severance packages. Some are 3 months, some are 6 months. Depending on how long you work for the company, that's how long they'll pay you up additionally. So we can see right now that it is ramping up. We're coming out of the summer. People are saying, whoa, wait a minute. We just went through the summer. I was living nicely on my severance package, and now I still don't have a job, and I'm continually putting out resumes. Well, they're starting to make the claims in unemployment. And right now, the initial jobless claims jumped from 21,000 to the highest since June. Continuing claims also rose, missing expectations for the 6 of the last 7 weeks. And we can see this is just continuing. Now, we understand that most Americans right now have a huge amount of debt. And this is reported that most of the people have part of their debt in collection right now. And this is all due to the fact what happened back in 2008. Most of the people lost their wealth. They lost their homes. They lost their jobs. They went into debt. And, of course, this doesn't help the economy whatsoever because they can't get credit. You can't get credit. It makes it a little bit more difficult to get an auto loan. But, of course, the government is making it easier for people to get this, and we can see that out of the most recent data, most of the borrowing is in autos and education. And, of course, once you get that loan in education and you graduate and you can't find a job, that sticks with you for the rest of your life. Auto loans are a little bit different. If you have a heartbeat, they'll give you an auto loan. But we see right now that a lot of people are delinquent on these auto loans. Car sales are starting to decline. We're coming out of the summer months, and it doesn't seem like it's getting better now. Cisco, they're cutting another 6,000 jobs because of declining sales. Again, when we are in a recovery, businesses increase sales. They don't decline. We see retail expand, real estate expand, mortgage departments expand to keep up with the demand of those people taking out mortgages. But we're seeing none of this. We're seeing an economy that is completely contracting and imploding on itself. I mean, look at the real estate market. That is going to come down really, really fast as we enter the fall. We have a lot of corporations that are already filing for layoffs coming in this fall. So this is a huge time period where we need to watch and see what's going to happen here, because as we know, 1929, 1987, 2008, huge stock market crashes in October. Now, we always talk about gold, and you hear all over the internet people talking about gold and how it's a safe haven, it's an insurance policy. And one great way of looking and trying to prove that, yes, it is, that it protects you, and I know a lot of people just say it does, but you have to look in certain areas. Look in areas like, I don't know, Ukraine, for instance. You see their currency being actually it's collapsing. It's devaluing so fast right now. It is completely collapsing. Now, let's take an example here. You're living in Ukraine, and people said, listen, buy precious metals. It's going to protect you. No, I have the Ukrainian currency. I'm going to hold on to this. Why would I go ahead and go for precious metals like gold and silver? Well, those people who decided to stay with the currency, they see it's becoming worthless. Those people who have gold and silver, guess what they've been seeing? A 70% increase since the start of 2014. So their wealth is being protected. I mean, we also see this in people who are living in Iraq, people who are in Syria, people who are in Gaza. Those people who have gold, precious metals, they have protected their wealth. The same thing is going to happen here. When your currency devalues to nothing, what do you have? You have your precious metals. And this is universally known. Back in 1929, those people who kept their gold and silver and didn't turn it over to the government and hid it, guess what? They maintained their wealth during the time period. And if they kept it in for a long period of time, they kept up with inflation all these years. So we can see right now from all these examples, yes, gold is very, very important. Now, here are some reasons why the economy's bubble of false prosperity may be about to burst, and this is coming from the Economic Collapse blog. Retail sales have missed expectations for 3 months in a row, and we just had the worst reading since January. Things have gotten so bad that even Walmart is really struggling. Some store sales at Walmart have declined for 5 quarters in a row, and the outlook for the future is not particularly promising. The 4-week moving average for mortgage applications just hit a 14-year low. It is now even lower than it was during the worst moments of the financial crisis of 2008. The tech industry is supposed to be booming, but mass layoffs in the tech industry are actually 68% ahead of last year's pace. According to the Federal Reserve, 40% of all households in the United States are currently showing signs of financial stress. The U.S. home ownership rate has fallen to the lowest since 1995. According to one survey, 76% of Americans do not have enough money saved to cover 6 months of expenses. So we can see right now it is really falling apart. And we can see by looking across the world, the United States central bankers are pushing, provoking of other countries in overdrive right now. They're ramping up the Middle East for war. They're putting this in overdrive. Now, Putin is out there, and he has maneuvered into something very, very smart. He decided that all oil and gas sold by Russia should be done with the ruble globally, because the dollar monopoly in energy trade is damaging to the economies of different countries. So what he did was he told other countries, if you would like our oil, start placing the ruble in your reserves. So what we have right now is other countries making trades with China who've been putting the renminbi yuan in their reserves. Now they're adding the ruble to their reserves. So we can see right now they are, Russia, China, the BRIC nations, they are really pushing this agenda hard. They realize the dollar is doomed. Okay, now there was a study done, and many people believe that the people have a voice in the U.S. policy, but there was a study done in Princeton, and guess what? The people really have no voice. And what they say here is that a startling new political science study concludes that corporate interests and mega-wealthy individuals control U.S. policy to such a degree that the preferences of the average American appear to have only minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. Wow, could they say that any clearer, that we have no say in anything? Yes, this country is not run by the people anymore. We are not really saying and pushing the government to do things that we want. Corporations are. The startling study titled Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens. This is what the report was called. The statistical research looked at the public attitudes on nearly 1,800 policy issues and determined that the government always ignores the opinions of average citizens and adopts the policy preferences of moneyed business interests when shaping the contours of U.S. laws. So we can say right now that the U.S. government, Congress, the Obama administration, the senators, do absolutely nothing for the people. They're not even listening. And if you do say something, they don't care. The study findings align with recent trends where corporate elites have aggressively pursued pro-amnesty policies despite the fact that according to the most recent Reuters poll, 70% of Americans believe illegal immigrants threaten traditional U.S. beliefs and customs, and 63% believe immigrants place burden on the economy. But of course, they're not listening to the people. They're listening to the corporations, the money people. So we can see right now it is time for the people to take back their country, and I believe what we need to do is remove the government officials. They definitely do not work for the people. They definitely do not work for our interests. Just look at Obamacare. I mean, is that really for the people, or is it for the insurance companies? Is it to bring revenue in for the government and to the money people inside the government? It had nothing to do with the people in providing them health insurance. Because if you really truly wanted to do this, you would not have taxes in it. You would not need penalties. You would not need any of this. Now, it looks like the situation in Ferguson is not actually getting better. It is actually getting worse. And we see that SWAT forces are completely all over the place in riot gear, descending on the protesters, and they're continually chanting that this is no longer a peaceful assembly. You better go home or we're going to arrest you. The police are even firing tear gas on the media people who are there, and they're also arresting people who are reporting on the situation. And the situation there is not good at all. And it looks like the governor of Missouri will reportedly relieve St. Louis County law enforcement from policing the ongoing demonstrations in the town of Ferguson. And it looks like they're bringing in the FBI and the federal type of investigators into the area. And it looks like the FBI is going to take control of the large part of the investigation into the shooting death of the 18-year-old. The FBI will oversee all operations, protests, and other activities there. And we can see right now the government just maneuvered itself, put its hand into this situation, and now we really need to be worried. Plus, Al Sharpton is on his way to the area, and most of the people don't even want him there. And whenever he gets involved, we know we have big problems. But the FBI is going to be controlling the whole entire situation, and the Department of Justice is also sending special prosecutors to the area. So we can see this is going to be ginned up, and we're going to see this is going to really get out of hand. Now, out in L.A., it looks like there's going to be protests on Sunday about a shooting out there, and this could be setting the stage right now to push the agenda of people rioting in different cities. We also see in Detroit that police are urging calm after cops shoot a suspect, and unruly crowds start to gather and start to protest about what has happened there. So we can see this is starting to spring up in all different places. Now, since the FBI has taken charge, we definitely have to watch out and look out for agent provocateurs in these areas, really trying to push the agenda of people rioting and have it spread across the country, because we know that the Obama administration has been trying desperately to declare martial law, to get rid of that pesky Constitution and suspend it, and to maintain control of the population here. And we can see this whole agenda is really being pushed forward right now. Now, we understand that these sanctions that were placed on Russia, and then Russia pretty much struck back with their sanctions on the agricultural ban, is really not doing well for Europe. I mean, Peru right now looks like they're going to increase their exports to Russia, and they might reach about $1 billion worth of exports. Finland is out there saying, you know what, right now, and you have to remember they're furloughing a lot of people in their dairy industry, and it's hurting their industry. They're saying that they're not looking at imposing any other sanctions on Russia at this point, because what Russia did with the food imports. But there is a study out there from Denmark's largest bank, Danske. They're saying that all of this is going to be over in 3 months. The EU is going to say, you know what, we're taking back our sanctions. We can't do this anymore. The food imports are killing our economy. We are spiraling downward so fast that we need to stop this. And they believe that the EU and most of the countries are going to say, listen, we're relieving the sanctions. And then Russia's going to say, okay, we drop the food sanctions on all the EU nations. But again, we'll have to see how this plays out, because guess what? The United States and central bankers, they're not going to go along with this. And they're going to continually try to push the EU in their agenda. And we're going to have to see how this plays out, which I really don't think, because the way the central bankers think, I don't think they're going to let this happen. I think they're going to have another false flag or something else to blame on Russia to try to convince the European nations that, yes, we need to keep these sanctions going. And we're going to have to watch that situation. Now, Russia is preparing U.S. import substitution program because they're trying to de-link themselves from the West because they see what's happening. They realize war is definitely on the horizon. And, of course, they're de-dollarizing right now. They're maneuvering and trying to keep food imports away from the West, and they're going to all the BRIC nations. And Russia right now is preparing a program in autumn to ensure the country's independence from U.S. and European imports. We are obliged today not simply to substitute, but to make the state independent from those decisions and measures that come from abroad. So you can see right now they are really saying, you know what, we are definitely separating ourselves. And all of this is coming about because of the U.S. sanctions, the European sanctions, and the continuing demonization of Russia and the provoking of Russia. Russia now is taking a stance of, you know what, we don't need you right now. We know what you're up to. Most of the BRIC nations know what you're up to, and we are separating ourselves from the West. So what does the U.S. do? Well, they're going to widen the terms for sanctions so they include more companies and government officials in the sanctions. The U.S. Treasury Department has revised the rule of blacklisting Russian companies to include firms where blacklisted officials and firms hold a 50% or more interest. Previously, a 50% or larger stake had to be owned by one blacklisted entity for the company to make it to the blacklist. Now, they are increasing and making it much more broad, bringing more and more companies and government officials into the fold here. So they're not backing off. They are really pushing this agenda. Why? Because they realize the economy is done. They realize it's collapsing. There's nothing else they can really do. They pumped it up, and they know the dump is coming right now. They realize the whole thing is going to fall apart, and if they don't do something very quickly, this entire collapse is going to be blamed on them. And this is why we see everything around the world being pushed very, very hard. Now, Putin is out there and he's saying that the food embargo is actually going to benefit Russia. It's not going to hurt Russia. It's going to benefit it, even though the President of the United States said no, the ban on the food ban that Russia placed on the United States and EU is going to make the people starve. They're not going to be able to get the products. But we can see right now they have already went to other nations and they're substituting all the food that they were getting from Europe and the United States with other nations, and they are starting to bring that in, which will then give more jobs to those nations, will boost their economy, help each one of these countries. In the same instance, Europe and the United States continually decline at the same time. Now, Ukraine and Slovakia plan to start reverse flow of gas in September. They're going to try it out to see if they can do it because winter is coming. They don't have enough gas in reserves, and this is going to make it very, very difficult to the people. Riots and protests are continuing in Ukraine. People do not want to go off to war, and I'm telling you right now, when that winter hits and they don't have enough gas, I wouldn't be surprised if there's another type of revolution, but this time a grassroots one where they kick out the puppet regime inside Ukraine. Now, it looks like it's very, very tough right now to get this humanitarian aid into Ukraine. I mean, Ukrainians have made all these demands. Russia's saying, yes, we'll meet all the demands, and they're continually making it harder and harder. They won't be allowed to go through certain checkpoints. And of course, Ukraine is out there saying that these look like armored vehicles that were repainted white, and they must have troops inside. They're getting ready for an invasion. And of course, the United States, the spokesperson Marie Harf is also out there saying the same exact thing, that, you know, this looks like they're trying to invade somehow, some way, and if they do invade, this means war with Russia. Now, of course, the Red Cross, the OSCE advisors, they're all there. They're bringing this in, and what I think is happening, I don't think Ukraine wants the Red Cross into the country to see exactly what's going on in this region. And I think they want to keep them out right now. And for a fact here, Putin would not bring in humanitarian aid and try to put troops inside the trucks. That is just ridiculous. That is not a strategy he would use. First of all, it's a strategy that the puppet regime in Ukraine would try to use, and it wouldn't work, because as soon as you go through any checkpoint, you know the troops are there, and he's not going to do this at this point. If he really wanted to do any type of invasion, he would do a full-out invasion. He wouldn't do something where they're hiding in trucks. And right now, he's trying to stay and step away from what is going on and not get involved because of all the propaganda that is out there right now. Now, it looks like the U.S. is going to be sending about 600 troops, APCs, and tanks to countries bordering Russia to reassure the threatening allies. And we can see right now the Army's 1st Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division will deploy to Poland and the Baltic states to help reassure European allies who feel threatened by Russia. The troops and their equipment, which include M1 Abrams tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers, will go to Europe in October for a 3-month series of training exercises. And as we know, as they have this training, they always seem to leave the military assets and the troops in this area. We also know the United States is placing all these more military assets in the caves in Norway. So we can see right now that this is really being pushed. They realize war is coming, and they are just maneuvering all the military assets into the area. Now, Maliki has decided that enough is enough. He would like to stop the bloodshed, and he is stepping down, giving his support to the new prime minister right now. So the United States got what they wanted. They wanted Maliki out. They wanted a complete puppet government, and this is what they got. This seems to be like a replay of when we overthrew Saddam Hussein, where the CIA placed Saddam Hussein into government. Then he started straying away from what the United States central bankers wanted him to do. So we had to go in there and remove Saddam Hussein because he was selling the oil, not using the U.S. dollar. So it seems like the same thing. Maliki wasn't following the instructions anymore. They wanted him out. He was making deals with Russia, and now they need a different puppet government inside of Iraq, and it seems like this is exactly what has happened. Now, the UN has declared the highest level of emergency in Iraq as the ISIS advance threatens minority groups in the country, as the Security Council urged Iraq's new prime minister to form an inclusive government to preserve state integrity and ease sectarian tensions, declaring the crisis in Iraq a Level 3 emergency, which represents the highest level of humanitarian crisis, will help trigger more resources and expedite administrative procedures for the response. So we can see right now they're doing everything they possibly can. They're going to support the new puppet regime. The UN has their emergency level in this area, and of course this will help United States central bankers get in there with boots on the ground to maneuver all the forces towards Syria and to other countries, because the Islamic State is everywhere. Now, it looks like Obama is going to end the humanitarian aid drops in Iraq. He's saying that mission is accomplished, claiming a victory for the United States in ending the Islamic State siege of thousands of Iraqis top Mount Sinjar, indicating that the U.S. and U.K. militaries will no longer drop food, water, and medicine, but they will continually use bombing there. Now, you have to remember, in these countries we have the tribes rising up, and most likely they're not hitting the Islamic State. They need them. They're hitting the tribes, pushing them back, because they are on their own agenda, just like in Lebanon, Libya, and Yemen. So we can see right now this agenda of bombing and trying to get troops in there is going to continue, and there'll be another event that occurs that they'll have to make some type of an excuse why they have to send even more advisors, advisors into the area. Now, the U.S. government, central bankers, and the U.S. Embassy is in the Middle East is fighting a battle with conspiracy theorists out there, because they're saying that the Islamic State is run by the United States government, Israel, UK, and the United States government central bankers are out there on Facebook saying, no, we are not, we have nothing to do with them, and there's no proof whatsoever. I guess it's almost like when All the conspiracy theorists were out there saying that the U.S. government was backing the rebels in Syria, and the U.S. government said, absolutely not. We have nothing to do with them. We are not giving them military assets. And then we found out, yeah, they were. Wow. I guess the U.S. government central bankers, they lied to the people. We know this is a lie. We know they have a strict agenda. Now, if you really look at the situation, the Islamic State moved into Iraq, and what did the United States central bankers do? Absolutely nothing. They were very quiet on the advancement of Islamic State. Yeah, they paid a lot of lip service, but they stayed back. You know why? Because the Islamic State was doing what they needed to do and taking directions from the government. And what's very interesting is, and mysterious, that America was completely silenced with the sudden explosion of the advancement of the Islamic State. And then all of a sudden, there were airstrikes. I mean, why was all this happening all at once? Well, the tribes were rising up inside of Iraq. They were getting out of hand, and they had to push them back a little bit. The Islamic State created chaos in the region. They really wanted Maliki ousted. He was not following instructions any longer, and they needed a new puppet government inside. The Islamic State allowed this to happen. They did the work for the U.S. government. So now that was done. Now the Islamic State will be filtering further into Syria and further into Libya and Lebanon, Libya, and Yemen. Because eventually what's going to happen is they're going to say everyone's the Islamic State. All these tribes rising up are the Islamic State. They're no longer Al-Qaeda. They've been completely combined now, and we have a new terrorist out there. And we have to be afraid because they are 10 times worse than Al-Qaeda. And we can see that this is definitely being pushed, and the agenda is going forward. Now, they have already started. The opposition, the rebels inside Syria right now, are saying that the Islamic State has captured rebel towns in its advance towards Aleppo. They said the Islamic State, what they did was they had the cooperation from the Syrian military. The sources said, and of course these sources cannot be named, said that the Islamic State was not being hampered by the regime of the Syrian President Assad. They said Assad's military and security forces, despite heavy fighting in the neighboring provinces of Deir al-Zor and Raqqa, were allowing Islamic State to capture rebel strongholds. So we can see what they're doing at this point. They're saying the Islamic State is part of Syria, and Syria is cooperating with them. And you have to remember, the propaganda before this was Syria was the springboard for terrorism. So we can see how this is starting to play out. Now, we understand the Islamic State is in Syria. The Islamic State is in Iraq. The Islamic State is trying to maneuver into Lebanon at this point, and we can see this is all part of the agenda, and this is really going to ramp up. Now, I don't know if everyone remembers, but when I was doing reports back in 2013, and there was the 2 internet blackouts that occurred in Syria. Well, it looks like Edward Snowden is out there, and he's saying, yes, this was done by the NSA. They were trying to cut off communications and plant malware to spy on what was going on inside of Syria to try to get more information. And what happened was, when they were accessing the router, they bricked it, and effectively cutting the country from the web, and the whole thing went down. And they went, holy crap, they're going to find us out because we have fingerprints all over that. And they quickly tried to cover their tracks by bringing the router and repairing it and bringing it back up. And of course, he was saying that they would make jokes saying if we did get caught, we would just say Israel did it. And of course, Syria was very, very busy during this time period fighting the rebels, and they really didn't realize what really happened or occurred there. But we knew, and going back there, we all said that it must have been the United States that went in and blacked out their internet. Now, it looks like the U.S. is ordering the embassy families out of Sierra Leone because the Ebola fears are now spreading, and we can see this is spreading throughout Africa right now. Emergencies in each one of these countries are being posted right now, and it is spreading, and we're going to have to still keep an eye on this. Now, a former New York City Police Commissioner, Bernard Kerik, said that the violent Islamic State radicals will be dispatched to the United States if they aren't here already. Now, like I said before, the United States already has pre-positioned these people who are going to carry out this terrorist attack, which is coming. And of course, it's going to make us believe that it was coming across the way here over the ocean, and most likely it's going to be the Islamic State. And they're going to have different areas where there might be a chemical or dirty nuke or whatever they have planned, and then eventually when they see the United States being attacked, they might even bring Russia in or China in to say they saw an opportunity to access the financial institutions and bring them down and collapse them. They're already out there blaming the economic collapse on Russia. So this is going to be ramping up because of their sanction ban. They decided that they're going to place the sanctions, which is going to hurt the economies of Europe and the United States, and they're already starting to play this up a little bit. So we can see how this is definitely going to play out as we move forward, and eventually we will see some type of an event here. It most likely will be a multi-pronged type of an event, and we can see as we move towards fall, things are really starting to ramp up across the world here in the United States, and we have to remember everything that's going on right now is all feeding into the same thing, and that is the economic collapse. They don't know how to control it. They know it's coming down, and they realize they need control of the American population. So if they can plant these riots, they can suspend the Constitution, declare martial law, they could have terrorists hit the area, DHS would be in control, and also the local law enforcement that will be in compliance with DHS. So you can see how this is all starting to play out now. They need total control of the situation, and it looks like this is what they're going to do. And they'll also take control of the internet because of all the executive orders that Obama has. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.